Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Convention with another installment of Shared Trait Spotlight. Last time we started working on the various shared traits that appeared in the recent House of X set, covering Krakoan Revival and the Five. This week we're covering Excalibur Mystical Protectors, which basically covers the lineup of the current Excalibur title. So some history. Excalibur was an X book that started in the I want to say late '80s or mid to late '80s, and it was more they were dealt more with fantasy type stuff. It was still an X-Men book. You had Nightcrawler, Phoenix, Rachel Summers, and Shadowcat involved, but yeah, it was still very much. They didn't fight the Brotherhood. They didn't fight often, or the Hellfire Club often. They fought extra dimensional and fantasy related enemies for a while. I think it was around the time when they tied into Fatal Attractions that they kind of began to be a bit closer to they kind of finally got a little bit closer to the X-Men. Though it should be noted there was an Excalibur tie-in, couple of issues I believe, to the Inferno crossover way back in the day. But yeah, Fatal Attractions was the first X crossover in a while that actually featured that included Excalibur. And from Fatal Attractions onward, the title was moved. The tone of the book was moved little by little closer to the tone of the rest of the X books. But anyway, future Excalibur titles would be much more standard X-Men fare. However, the Dawn of X Excalibur was much more along the lines of the original Excalibur title when it first started. And it had an interesting lineup, and among other things, it featured Apocalypse working on the concepts of mutant magic. But anyway, so a couple of fun points about this team. Everyone on our top dials, it's an even 600 points. Running Gambit, Captain Britain, Rogue, and A at their lower point dials, and you've got yourself an even 300 point team. The four of them on their lower point dials, plus Richter and Jubilee, who just have one starting line apiece. Is an even 300 points. And as A can only use Krakoan Revival on his lower point dial, is then totally legit for Krakoan Revival. So, yeah, who all's on the team? Well, we'll start off. First, before we go into who's on the team, let's talk about the trait. The trait is Excalibur Mystical Protectors, and it grants the Mystics team ability, which deals if a character with the Mystics team ability is hit with an attack, the attacker takes one click of penetrating damage. Used to be unavoidable, but yeah. And in fact, the team ability used to be copyable, but it's not anymore. Well, anyways, so the trait grants the Mystic team ability, but only against range attacks. It also grants protection from the Mystic team ability, so they can attack characters with the Mystic team ability with impunity and not worry about taking damage. However, the shtick there is if you get in close, they're kind of screwed. So, now the actual team. We've got Richter to start things off. Richter was an early member of the New Mutants. He left the New Mutants after Cable had arrived, among other things citing the fact that he had accused Cable of murdering his father. It was actually Strife who did, but not the point. Eventually, he would join X-Force after linking up with Weapon Prime to take down X-Force, mainly to take down Cable, but yeah. Lost his powers on M-Day, and joined X Factor Investigations, where he was reunited with X-Force teammate Shatterstar. The two began a pursuit of a romantic relationship, which would in the end not work out, sadly. He got his powers back in the Avengers Children's Crusade miniseries when Scarlet Witch basically undid her spell. No more mutants. He appeared in Age of X-Man, and then in the early issues of Excalibur, it showed that he was having trouble controlling his powers, and so eventually he did make it to Krakoa, and Apocalypse started working with him to help with helping with controlling his powers. Apocalypse, of course, had his own reasons for this, but yeah. Anyway, so looking at Richter as a figure, he comes in at 40 points. He has no team ability, but he has the Excalibur, New Mutants, X-Force, or X-Factor, X-Force, X-Men, and mystical keywords, as well as improved movement, ignorance, hindering terrain, and outdoor blocking terrain. Now, of course, the ignorance, hindering terrain is no longer a thing anymore, but yeah. We've got two traits, Excalibur, mystical protectors, obviously, and I know a thing or two about moving Earth. Barrier. Barrier is free, but only to generate one blocking terrain marker. When Richter uses Barrier, after resolutions, you may remove one blocking terrain marker adjacent to the generated markers. Okay. Now, if he were to erect a barrier adjacent to an opposing figure's barrier, he could then remove a square of blocking from the opposing barrier, and then which could potentially make for a hole that could be utilized. Looking at his dial, we've got ourselves a couple of clicks of charge, followed by a few clicks of sidestep. On attack, we have a full run of the special power, I am everywhere you have ever stood, granting him Quake. When he uses it, he may also target opposing characters within range that are adjacent to squares of blocking terrain. Okay, alright. That's actually kind of useful. On defense, we start off with some super senses, but that's going to get rid of willpower. On damage, we start off with nothing, but he clicks into Perplex. Okay. Next up, we've got Jubilee. And yes, that is a baby on Jubilee's back. So, for those of you who don't know who Jubilee is, she was introduced in the late 80s to the X-Men. She was a typical Southern California mall rat. Accidentally followed the X-Men home. Who accidentally followed the X-Men through one of Gateway's portals to Australia. She basically became Wolverine's sidekick for a while. Her powers are basic fire. Her powers are basically described as being fireworks from her hands. Now she can generate powerful enough energy blasts that can actually take down a Sentinel, and she has in fact done just that. As a teenager, I might add. She also lost her powers on M-Day. She was a founding member of Generation X. Lost her powers on M-Day. Became a vampire. Eventually got her powers. Was cured of vampirism, got her powers back, and has since adopted a baby named Shogo. And she's discovered something interesting about Shogo while working with X-Force, or with Excalibur, namely that when going to Otherworld with him, he turns into a giant dragon. Yeah. So, she comes in as a figure, she comes in at 50 points. She has the X-Men team ability, as well as the Excalibur, Generation X, X-Men, Monster, and Mystical keywords. We've got the Mystical Protector's trait. Then looking at her dial, she's actually got two dials. She's actually got a split dial. Which we'll get to that here in a moment. In fact, we'll go over one dial at a time. But yeah, her dial. We've got sidestep, energy explosion, initial deflection. We have a special power, Shogo's transformation, and we get a few clicks of perplex. So Shogo's transformation, as a free action, once per game for all friendly characters with this power. If it's your 5th turn or later, or the map's name includes Otherworld, Jubilee can be turned to click number 7, which is where the Shogo dial begins. Now the Shogo dial, this part of the dial, we've got on speed, you're not a human baby, which grants running shot, flight, and the giant size swim ability, and protection from outwit and pulse wave. On attack, we've got Dragon Fire, range +3, penetrating psychic blast. As a free action, remove all non-debris terrain markers within range from the map. Ooh. Then on defense, we've got Invincible, and on damage, we've got Shape Change. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Next up, we've got Gambit. Gambit comes in at 80 points or 50 points. He has the X-Men team ability as well as improved movement and improved targeting or Tinder Train. Excalibur, X-Men, Martial Artist, Mystical, and Spy keywords. Honestly, Gambit's actually a fairly well-known character, so, you know, kind of going into who he is seems redundant, but he's a member of the Thieves Guild from New Orleans. He was hypothesized by some fans to potentially be the third Summers brother for a while due to the fact that Mr. Sinister had an interest in him as well. Let's see. He actually he led the Marauders into the Morlock tunnels in the beginning of Mutant Massacre. More recently, he married longtime love interest Rogue, and the two have since moved to Krakoa together, and obviously worked together on Excalibur. In a darker moment in Gambit's life, Gambit was also what became, in the aftermath of M-Day, Gambit became the Horseman of Death. And so he is extremely untrusting of Apocalypse. So, we've gone through keywords, certain traits, point cost, and team ability. The only trait Gambit has is the Excalibur Mystical Protector's trait. Looking at his dial, we open up with a couple clicks of a special speed power. I ain't sure why you need a Thief, which grants running shot and stealth. That then gives way to regular running shot, followed by sidestep. On attack, we got a special power, Oh It Ain't Magic, which grants energy explosion and precision strike. As a free action, Gambit can make an attack, but only to target a single non-standard character. Okay. That then gives way to regular energy explosion. On defense, we open up with super senses followed by inertial deflection. On damage, we open and end with a couple clicks of perplex. 2 at the beginning, 2 at the end. Next up, we've got Captain Britain. I'm not going to go into the whole thing with Captain Britain. It's long, it's complicated, and could honestly be its own video. Simply put, Brian Braddock was Captain Britain. He would eventually go to another realm to investigate, to look into things. In fact, I can even show you a figure of Captain Britain. That was Brian as Captain Britain. He led the old Excalibur team with his now wife Megan. There was a brief moment where he became Britannic, having disappeared in the time stream, and then, yeah, it was weird. But, anywho, Betsy, who in the beginning of the X Factor is really, or Excalibur is really trying to find her place, having been in another woman's body for the last long while, and finally having her own body back. So where does she go from there? But she became Captain Britain, much to the chagrin of the Omniversal Majestrix Opal Luna Saturnine, who is totally in love with Brian Braddock. Anywho, so Captain Britain comes in at 80 points or 30 points. Has the X-Men team ability as well as the Excalibur, X-Men martial arts, and mystical keywords. She has 2 traits, Excalibur mystical protectors, as well as telepathic coordination, which grants her leadership. And when she uses leadership and succeeds, she may also remove an action token from a friendly character within range with the X-Men or Excalibur keyword. Her range being only 3. Looking at her dial, we open up with a long block of charge, followed by a couple of plasticity. On attack, we open up with a decently sized block of special power Psionic Arming Sword, which grants Blaze Claw's Fangs. Once per turn, when she uses blades, you may choose to reduce the d6 roll by 1 or 2, choose before rolling. If you do, decrease the target's combat values by the same amount until your next turn. I can see the use there, but having to declare you're doing it before you roll, yeah, it's, yeah. That thing gives way to regular Blaze Claw's Fangs. On defense, she opens up with Impervious, which then gives way to Toughness, which then gives way to Combat Reflexes. On damage, we open up with Exploit Weakness, which is then followed by Outwit. Okay. Honestly, she's not bad at all. Next up, we've got Rogue. Rogue's another one who I'm not really sure she... Yeah, I feel like I probably should give her an intro like I give the others, but at the same time, it's Rogue. If you're halfway familiar with the X-Men, you likely have a passing familiarity with Rogue. But anyway, Rogue is from Mississippi. Her powers are that through touch she can drain the life force, memories, and powers from other people. Powers if they have powers. At least. There are very few that can actually resist her. She actually in her first appearance took the powers of Thor, in fact. Without effort, I might add. Most notably, she through prolonged contact with Carol Danvers back when she was Miss Marvel, Rogue permanently gained Miss Marvel's power set, most of it at least. She didn't get the energy projection abilities, but flight, invulnerability, super strength. Anyway, so after the whole thing with Captain Marvel or with Miss Marvel, she went to the X-Men for help. Leaving the Brotherhood of Mutants. After her powers manifested, she was raised by Destiny and Mystique, and came to see Mystique. Came to see the two as her mothers. And in fact, Mystique, in all honesty, Mystique does love her like a daughter. Though her way of showing it is usually questionable at best. But she recently married Gambit. Rogue has also been a longtime member of the X-Men, serving on various X teams, and was the leader of the last iteration of the Avengers Unity Squad. Yeah, so she comes in at 90 points or 60 points. Has the X-Men team ability as well as the Excalibur, X-Men, and mystical keywords. We got 2 traits, the Excalibur mystical protectors trait, and then turns out I don't need the gloves. As a free action, choose an adjacent character and a standard power that they can use. Until your next turn, Rogue can use that power and has that character's printed range value. Ooh, okay. Looking at her dial, we've got some hypersonic speed on speed, followed by charge. On attack, we get super strength, followed by steel energy. On defense, we got invulnerability, followed by toughness. Then we get a few single clicks here and there of battle fury on damage, thankfully on the first click as well. She has a printed 0 range, but she can get that up to, however high she needs it to be. For example, if she were to target Gambit with her with her trait, she could have a range of 7. Same with Apocalypse, with A actually. Okay, Richard's got a 6. Jubilee's got a 5. Or you could use it on to target an opposing character, and yeah, you get the idea. Anyway, finally, we've got A, formerly known as Apocalypse. Real name Insaba Nur, the first one. One of the earliest mutants. A has had quite a bit of fleshing out done since House of X and Powers of X ended, or Powers of 10 ended. We've learned various things, like he has a wife and children who are insanely old, just like he is. He knows Krakoa, the mutant island Krakoa, personally. Yeah, it's very interesting stuff, actually. And he also has an interest in magic, which is something that was never really gone into previously. He was always about survival of the fittest, and pitting characters against one another to see who would be this, so that the victor could be one of his horsemen or some such. Anyway, A comes early on in Excalibur. He took the name A. It's not pronounceable. Well, it's probably pronounceable, but yeah. Of course, everyone still does tend to refer to him as Apocalypse, but yeah. Anyway, so he comes in at either 160 points or 70 points. He has the Cosmic Energy as well as X-Men team abilities. He's got 3 traits. If he comes in at 70 points, he has the Krakoan Revival trait. But we're looking at more on the 130 from the 130 point dial. So yeah. Then we got the no matter what, the Excalibur Mystical Protectors trait, and finally a fickle and finite resource. When a standard character is KO'd, give a crystal token. If that character has a mystical keyword, give him 2 instead. As a free action, remove a crystal token. If you do, choose A or an adjacent friendly character with the X-Men keyword and a standard damage power. The chosen character can use that power until your next turn. Okay, alright. Now let's take a look at his dial. It's a bit of a long one. So we get some running shot to start with. We get some sidestep, more running shot, then some late dial charge. Long block of penetrating psychic blast, followed by quake on attack. We've got on defense. We've got invincible, followed by impervious, followed by invulnerability, and then we got a defense special power. My position on the Quiet Council grants me certain rights, which is a stop click. He also is given invulnerability and mastermind. When the click is first revealed after resolutions, roll a d6. Heal a number of clicks equal to the result. So you could get him back up to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could almost get him back up to the top dial. Almost. And as he's not a giant, he can be equipped with, say, a soul gem for some steel energy. Then on damage, we've got a mix of probability control and outwit at first, then a couple clicks at the end of Battle Fury. Interesting to note is that as this was designed before the rules changes, he has the Indomitable defense symbol, but he has Cosmic Energy, which grants willpower. So, and as one might be aware, until the new rules actually come out, willpower technically just allows one to ignore pushing damage. So he has 2 ways to ignore pushing damage, which no longer is a thing. But yeah, that's our Excalibur. That's the Excalibur lineup. Next week we'll be combining Shared Trait Spotlight with Starter vs. Booster to take a look at the Mutant CIA X-Force. as X-Force was the target of, or was the basis for the Fast Forces for House of X. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. In the comments, by all means, feel free to let me know your thoughts on this lineup, on this build. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.